Well, it's just the preseason. You have to look at it that way because obviously that's not going to be the closing lineup in regular season games when it's that close. The young guys did what they could. Patrick Williams actually made a nice strong drive to the basket to potentially take that go-ahead basket. Was aggressive and beating his man, but just could not finish the contested shot. And then the pretty poor execution in getting off a final three to try and tie the game with a few seconds left. Can't imagine that play was drawn up for Io. You'd have to think that Patrick was supposed to be taking that final three, but it is what it is. It's a preseason game. That said though, you kind of hope that this younger lineup would be a little better in the clutch at this point. Some costly mistakes, turnovers, missed shots, and it's not like these guys weren't trying, they absolutely were. What's crazy is that this actually felt like a regular season game in terms of the atmosphere. The crowd was getting into it, the back and forth in the fourth quarter. Guys were actually playing hard, fighting for loose balls, diving onto the ground. Just didn't feel like a preseason kind of energy. I imagine it'll kind of be a similar feel for the final preseason game on Thursday before the Bulls essentially have a week off before their first regular season game next Wednesday. But the poor execution down the stretch aside, there were things that I liked about this game, and of course there were things that I didn't. First things first, obviously the starters are seeing more minutes as they ramp up towards the end of the preseason. The big three, all of them played close to 30 minutes in this one. They played well together, although at times you kind of saw some sloppy play, which you hope is a product of it just being the preseason, that they're going to be playing or not playing as tight as they would otherwise normally do in a regular season game. I mean, the Bulls had a lot of turnovers today. Credit to the Raptors and their defense, but some of these were just bad, unforced turnovers, whether it be a bad pass, stepping on the sideline, palming the ball, traveling. But what I will say, as it relates to the big three, another great aggressive attacking type game from Zach Lavine. Took a lot more threes today, was 3 for 8 from deep. Got to the basket with his incredible finishing ability as well, finishing the game 25 points on 10 for 19 shooting, 4 rebounds and 3 assists. And despite the Bulls turning the ball over a lot as a whole, Zach actually took care of the ball very well, only turning it over twice in 30 minutes of play compared to, say, Coby, who turned over 5 times, or Patrick Williams 4 times. Vucevic was back in action, active in the paint, fighting through contact, a double-double with 20 points and 10 rebounds. He was the high man in terms of box plus minus in this one, with a +9 on the night. They're still not playing through Vucevic though. Like all that stuff that they talked about on media day and in training camp about how they were going to utilize Vucevic more as a playmaker, that hasn't really happened thus far in the preseason. It just seems odd because of the whole plan or scheme that they were talking about has seemingly gone by the wayside and no one is really talking about it anymore. I actually have Casey Johnson coming on the channel tomorrow. I'm going to ask him about that to try and get more insight into why that's actually not happening or is no longer the case. Now, Coby White, which by the way started again tonight, I think it's pretty clear that he's going to be the starter for this team coming opening night. Coby White, while he had some sloppy plays, which you see in the amount of turnovers he committed, but man, I am really looking forward to seeing how this kid shows up this season. I tweeted at some point in the first half that it's confirmed Coby White is going to be having a breakout season. I know I'm getting ahead of myself here because it's just the preseason and Coby followed up by not having the best second half, but some of the mistakes aside, it's just his overall decision making. His IQ, his ability to navigate screens properly and be a voice on the defensive end when calling out screens, fighting through them. I mean, the way that he's seeing the court on offense and using his handles to drive to the paint and kicking it out for an open three is not something we have seen Coby White do consistently throughout his career. And we're seeing it now. And it couldn't come at a better time when the Bulls need that huge jump from a player like him. The box score doesn't tell the story of Coby and what he's been able to do. I mean, 11 points, 4 assists, whatever, but it's the impact he's providing to the starting unit, being that guy to facilitate the offense, moving the ball quickly in transition, and getting easier buckets for the other guys. Zach Lavine, DeMar, and Vooch. I mean, it was frequent back when Lonzo was the point guard that they would just get easy baskets. Coby White tonight was seeing these outlet plays, getting it out to Zach on a breakaway up ahead. Those plays weren't happening last year because they didn't have a guy who could make those heads-up plays. If Coby can be that guy and do so consistently, oh boy, look out. That could be a huge catalyst for this team. Now, Patrick Williams, I'm not going to say it was a bad game for Pat, but for me it was more what I talked about in the last post-game video. Seeing Patrick show up consistently. How many times have we said it? We've seen these flashes. He'll have these great games. He plays well in these games that don't matter as much. He's aggressive in getting the paint. He's putting up more shots, but then he follows it up with a game like this, where really until the fourth quarter, there wasn't a lot of action from Pat. Now, some of that, I'm sure, is because Zach, DeMar, and Vooch are back in the lineup, but in tonight's game, you saw more of that passive Pat. Still hasn't been able to crash the boards, missing shots inside. Now, granted, he has been more assertive in getting to the paint and making strong plays at the basket, which is great to see, but you have to have bigger nights from him than we saw today, in which he was 4 for 13 from the floor. Got to be more efficient, and he can't be turning the ball over that frequently. On the flip side, though, man, I'm already loving Torrey Craig. I mean, we kind of already knew that he was going to be a fan favorite, but this dude, he just gets it, knows his role, hustles, plays hard on both ends of the floor, savvy, high IQ veteran. I mean, Patrick Williams has been getting the start in the preseason at power forward, but I would not be surprised if Billy Donovan makes a change to have Torrey Craig in the starting lineup come opening night against Oklahoma City. Now, the individual performances aside, here is what has me concerned in watching this game and how the Bulls are showing up as a unit. I mean, the Bulls, we talked about all offseason about how they want to change their overall style on offense, how they want to be attacking the paint more, playing more up-tempo, and moving the ball around more, and of course, taking more threes. I would say for the most part, there are elements of the ball movement that is there. The pace, tempo, and the manner for which they are playing in transition has greatly improved, but what concerns me is the Bulls still aren't taking enough threes. They're not prioritizing outside shooting. You saw it in that first preseason game, and since then, it's kind of fallen by the wayside. Now, I realize it's preseason, rotations aren't going to be the same, starters aren't going to be getting the minutes that they usually would, but there is something to be said when the Bulls over the last 3 games haven't taken more than 30 threes. Tonight, they were 9 for 26 from deep, and they also didn't get to the foul line enough, which is something Billy Donovan talked about. Only 11 free throws this entire game. Get this, the Raptors had more free throws in this game than the Bulls had 3-pointers and free throw attempts combined. Raptors also shot more threes than the Bulls did as well, even though they weren't very efficient at it. But yeah, I mean, kind of a problem when your 2 main areas of focus on offense in terms of getting to the paint to draw contact and get to the foul line more, as well as shooting more threes, isn't happening. So yeah, it's a little concerning. I'm obviously not going to blow it out of proportion because I need to see how this translates into the regular season and if different lineups and rotations do anything differently, but not something you want to see when you know this was a massive issue last season that led to the Bulls finishing below 500 and 10th in the Eastern Conference. But anyway, it was a close game. It was actually a fun game, even though the Bulls came up short. They play their final preseason game on Thursday. I've got KC coming on tomorrow. Feel free to leave some questions in the comments you would like me to ask KC. Be on the lookout for the interview as well. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.